February 9th, Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is a joint meeting with the school board. It's February 23rd, 2021. On the agenda that you have, we're going to start off with item number 2 first, the reversion funds, before we get to the budget and go through the school reversion numbers to make sure we're correct and where we are. I think I asked Dr. Calvert and Dr. Ross at the beginning. We do that first.
Yes, ma'am. That would be great. Yes, sir.
My board is present. Mr. Clay Forehand to my right. To my left at the long table is Mr. Thomas, Mr. Sealy, Mr. Jeff Black, Nancy Long, and I'm Reggie Underwood from the Church District. You want to introduce your board?
Awesome. All of my board members are present. We have Mr. Kelly, Mr. Copeland, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Spalding, Ms. Carson, and myself, Dr. Owens-Fells.
Okay. What I'd like to do first is to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of reversion numbers. And I know that Ms. Smith is here from the county and from our side. So what I'd like to do first is just to make sure that we're all correct. So as of end of 2019, and I think this was sent to us in a memo, there was $36,107 in the reversion from 2016 through 2019. Dr. Calvert and Dr. Rollins-Hills, you want to have Ms. Lewis check that number? Are you okay with that number?
We have for FY15 $419,479.
Just give me a total. This is through 19.
Correct.
16 to.
Correct. I'm sharing what we have. For FY15, we have $419,479 that was not reappropriated. From FY16, we have $796,417. Of that amount, $732,840 was reappropriated. The cash was received in FY18. In FY17, there was $0 carryover amount. In FY18, there was $213,502. And in FY19, there was $822,602.
Give me a total.
I do not have a calculator, so Ms. Smith, if you can add that up, that would be great.
I have 2.252.
That's not as of the audit.
Correct.
As of the audit, as of this 2019.
Yes. So there's some.
The audited number is $1,036,107 from 2016 to 2019.
Okay, there is some history on the audits that prior to my arrival.
There's some history on mine too, but I'm going to go by what the audit says.
Okay, for Exhibit 33 on the audit report, there is $110,734 that was appropriated to the local government that was not given to the local government. That was part of the $732,840 that was reappropriated from you all. In FY15 audit report, there was $130,850 that was not provided to the government that was appropriated. So with that, there's historical corrections that were done to the report, and Mr. Cully was also informed or made me aware of it, that the money was not getting transferred that stated that it was being appropriated. It was not fully being transferred.
Okay, so Mr. Cully, are you there?
Yes, if I can get my mouse to get to the right screen. I got 4 monitors, I gotta find the right one. That is correct. That was only appropriate in the final quarter based on expenditures, and that's what we discovered with the reversion funds of that $700 and some thousand of reversion funds that Dr. Parker kept stating. They actually didn't get the cash, and we had to sort all that out. But we don't have numbers going back, Mr. Underwood, to 15, so if they're gonna start adding in 15, 14, and 13, the way Beth has been doing it previous, you're never gonna get to a number. We have to research all that too. This is just 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, and the restatement in 20 just got rid of the various, deferred revenues and put it all into their fund now.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, as I stated, from 2016 to 2019, I'm not going back any further. You guys can go back further and give us a different number if you like. Okay? This is the number that we ended with in 2019, $1,036,107. Okay? We can talk about the other 13, 14, whatever you think is there, we can do that, okay? Later, but for right now, this is my exercise, this is what we're gonna use, okay?
So are you asking for us to provide agreement with that number or not?
Well, why don't you start at 16 through 19 and make sure you agree with that number?
That's fine. So
And you can
for,
talk about the rest of it afterwards.
we're not concerned with FY15. The only reason we have that number is we wanted to be able to reference it at a later time when talking about reversion. So we're fine not utilizing this for your exercise, Mr. Underwood.
Okay,
For-
good.
for
If I go back to 2016, you had 142. You started off with 140,561. You ended up with 142. So at the end of 2016, and I can go back that far, you had 282, excuse me. I can give you year by year if you like, according to our numbers, if you want those.
That would be fine, and then would we have the opportunity to share with you what we have on our books based on the
Absolutely.
audits? Thank you. Good. If you start with FY16, that would be fabulous.
All right, at FY16, your beginning fund balance was 287,448. You returned 85,683 for a net balance of 373,131, which means your FY17 beginning was
Can you stop there, Mr. Underwood?
Excuse me?
You're going too
Yeah,
fast.
all right. For 16, that's what the audit showed, they returned 85, but that's because we didn't do that transfer. So if you figure in the transfer to get to the 732,840, that would have been $445,392 for 16.
Okay.
So that makes the ending fund balance 732,840, which was that number we agreed to that Dr. Parker said they had in reversion. The audit only shows that they returned 85,683 for a total fund balance in 16 at 373,131.
Mr. Cully, with all due respect, I'm going by the numbers that you gave me.
These are the numbers I gave you.
That's the, that's the number.
It's the top chart.
Right,
373, 131.
373,131. He's at 77.
Right. That's what's in the audit. But we in the schools agree that the audit's wrong right there because Beth didn't transfer the funds. Although we didn't figure that out until a number of years later.
Yeah, what's the number?
So what is the number, Charlie, again?
732,840, which was the number that Dr. Parker had put forward that we actually returned to them in reversion.
So we returned that?
Instead of.
Yeah, we gave them 732,840 and with a list of projects, Mr. Seeley. I can go pull all that documentation, but there was all these projects they were gonna do for that money. Well, then when we gave them that money, and different school folks and different finance folks on our end sort of lost track of all of it. Don't you remember what we had to go through to sort of reconcile that?
That's on this
Along
spreadsheet.
with all the anthem
It's in
funds that
green.
was also going along at that time.
The 732, 840.
At the bottom, right.
It's in green on the right side, you see?
On the bottom one. The corrected,
It says corrected for reversion.
corrected for reversion, right. Okay,
Still end up with the same.
Same number, right,
money
okay.
today,
so,
But the audit doesn't reflect that back in 16.
all right, so it's still the same number at the end, as of, okay.
Right.
So let me go back then, okay, Dr. Calvert. So, at the end of FY16, 732,840, okay?
Okay?
at the end of, so you spent 207,000 of that year 17. The ending balance was 524,974 as of FY 2017. So your beginning balance was 524,974. We gave you, you spent once, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Or 18 now.
I'm
Now you're on-
I'm on year 18.
18, because 524 at the end of 17.
That was our starting balance. But there's a mistake there, Charlie, because there's 168 in the net change, which says their end balance was 35,000 on FY 18.
Hold on a minute.
Same chart.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm trying to figure out where I got that from. That should be. Oh, I know why that is.
Okay.
I know why, because the 19 audit shows 35,126. So I
Correct.
can't change the ending fund balance from 18 because the net audit fund balance for 19 shows 35,126.
I think we're all lost.
That's a number right out of the audit.
Okay, Charlie, so tell you what, I'm gonna start here, like I started, from 2019 ending balance, and we'll work out the difference.
Could I make a suggestion in the effort to be productive at the time that we have this evening? Really, the only conversation that I think we are intending to have in relation to reversion this evening is the FY 20 funds. We are not asking, nor do we feel the need to go back to retroactively review those previous amounts. We want to just talk about the remaining
Okay,
FY 20
that's fine.
funds, and that may help us.
It will. So
Proceed.
then we'll do that. So at the last meeting, we said we were going to spend 1,218,507. 507.
Correct.
Okay. So I think hopefully we can work this here out. Okay?
Right. Sure.
The question is, and as you said, I was going to come to that. The question is, what do we do with at the end of 20? The amount that was left over was 2,734,15. Do you agree with that number at the end of the school year?
The amount that was left was $1,967,300.
Prior to the medical holiday and the 2020 bonuses, do you agree that it was 2,734,15?
Well, we would not consider the holiday and the pandemic pay to be carryover funds. That was money that was spent in our operations budget during the FY 20 fiscal year.
And-
So that was not carryover funding. But if you're asking if that amount plus the 1.967315 equates to the number you just shared, I'd ask Marcia to add those two totals together.
I'm showing the pandemic pay and the insurance holiday was $796,140. And we had the 1,967,315. It's 2,763,455.
Right, so our contention is at the end of operating in FY 20, you had $2,700,000 left over. And then you chose to give a bonus
Pandemic pay
And-
and a 1-month holiday
and holiday.
for health insurance for those that are participating.
And that got us to the 1,967,315.
Correct.
And that's the reversion funding money now that we're talking about.
Absolutely. of which you have already appropriated $182,402.30. So we
Right.
subtract that,
Right.
we come to $1,784,912.70
That's
remaining.
correct. And that's where the issue is. I think my board agrees, and I've talked to my board. If you are operating in a normal year, you've returned to the board $200,000 to $400,000 per year. The fact that you operated in a year where you didn't have to spend and operate at the same cost does not mean that money is free. It returns back to the taxpayer. That can't be considered as reversion funds. And if any board members disagree or have anything to say about that, we can.
Well, if you would not mind, I have a couple of different things that may be helpful in the conversation in the packet that we provided. The first thing that we wanted to do, which we shared with you that we would do on February 9th, was that we would provide you with an update associated with the February 9th projects that the board selected to move forward with the $1.2 million of reappropriated money to the CIP fund. So I just wanted to make sure that you, on the first document that is in black and white, you can see that we have outlined all of the funding associated with reversion monies for 18, 19, and 20. The remaining money is in blue, which is the 1.7 million. And then we have outlined the projects, and on the back side of this sheet, you'll see the letter that Mr. Cully succinctly captured
Right,
all
the
of
same
those
numbers,
items.
right.
Correct.
So you're saying what you believe to be the rest of FY '20, and we don't think you have that.
No, I understand that you
Okay.
believe that it should be
Okay.
parceled differently, but that is the total number
That's the total
of remaining
number.
money. Yes, sir. So I think
Correct.
we're in agreement there.
Correct.
So we just wanted to let you know that since February 9th, we have not sat idle. We were very grateful to receive the $1.2 million, which comprised 18, 19, and a portion of 20. And so we have taken the items that you have selected from our prioritized list. We listed them here, and we wanted to give you an update, just a quick glance of the work that has been captured already in this 2-week time period. Now, certainly we have not had the opportunity to address each of those items,
Right.
but I'm not going to go line item by line item for you. You certainly can eyeball projects that you have a passion for and see what updates have occurred. The only piece that is not noted on this sheet is the softball field. I think there was agreement that the county would support the school division in helping to manage that. I will share that on February 17th, our CHS team, our maintenance team, Mrs. Stevens and Kevin Whiteman did all plan a meeting and come together on site. They talked about the needs, which were solidified collectively amongst the party that was present. Mr. Whiteman indicated that he would draft some plans, and once those plans were completed, addressing those projects, that team would come back together again. They would run through the plans. We would then hopefully green light them in relation to presenting them to, I would imagine, the Board of Supervisors, so that you would be prepared to move forward with those projects.
I talked to Mr. Whiteman, and he said you had a meeting with
Right.
your staff, and he gave me the logistics.
Awesome.
Mr. Underwood,
So I don't think, yes,
if I can just ask, was the softball coach present at that meeting?
I believe that Ms. Blackwell was, but I wasn't at the meeting, so.
the AD,
Was the softball
Ms.
coach present?
Blackwell was not present at that meeting.
Can we make sure that the softball coach is at the,
it's not up to us, it's up to them.
Yeah, right, okay, thank you.
I mean, the AD was there, Mr. Monroe was there, the maintenance person was there,
Okay.
Ms. Lewis was there. They had 6 people there, so why she wasn't there, I don't know.
Because it's, yeah,
But-
she runs, but that's fine, let's go
But
ahead.
that's not my
Yep.
in the front.
So the next aspect, besides updates associated with the projects from February 9th, we thought it was important just to revisit some of those remaining projects that were initially submitted. And while we know that we may not be a recipient of the $1.7 million, we know that these needs are needs, and needs don't disappear. They continue to move forward, and sometimes they become exacerbated by wear and tear or costs associated with years passing. So we wanted to make sure we captured them, and we color-coded them for ease of viewing. So the red items in this prioritized carryover projects with the remaining 1.7 indicate safety items. So those would be the projects that we would want to address first. And so those total approximately $600,000+. Now that 208 that you see in the bottom left corner, that was the cost that we had appropriated for the softball field. So we just lumped that 208 into those safety costs and assumed that we would, if able to access these monies, we would supplement the wrestling multipurpose facility with those additional funds. So that's there for your awareness. The second category of colors are yellow, and that is facility and system longevity. Those are things that we know that over time will need replacement. And so the system component was added because we do have the point of sale system for the food service department that is antiquated, and so that is a system longevity issue. The other items are more facility related. And then the tertiary, the green, are other categories. And those are some supplemental things that we hope to be able to purchase, if not out of these one-time capital funds or reversion funds, out of this year's year-end monies. And so we just wanted you to be aware, 12 out of 20 of these projects that are on this list are actually part of the current capital improvement plan submission. So they have not only been submitted through past CIPs, but they're currently on the CIP that will go forward to the Planning Commission on Thursday. So that gives you just an idea of what remains and what potentially, if we were able to access even a portion of the 1.7, how we would hope to utilize those monies. Any questions on that?
Oh, stop. Board, any questions on?
Well, we're talking about the 1.7, and these are ways you would use that 1.7.
Correct.
And we already gave you 1.2.
Correct.
Which is not included in this 1.7.
Yes, sir.
That adds up to the 3,000, whatever number, right?
But it's the 1.2 and the 1.7 add up to the 2.
You're at 2.9.
2.9.
And then we took the softball field out, so there's something else in there, but that's okay.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure I understand where you are.
That's their thinking, correct?
Right. Just to not lose sight of some of these projects.
Right.
That,
And I agree with you, projects are projects that really don't go away.
sure.
We're gonna pick up a couple of them, softball field and I guess another thing.
Right.
So maybe, Mr. Chairman, you were saying that you thought there was a different end number in the carryover.
Right. My end number is 1,000,009. So there's a difference of a couple $100,000. The audited number that I have is 1,967,315. That's the audited
That's
number.
correct. That's correct.
So that's the number that there, for me, is the discussion point. Is do we, the board, feel that the 1.9 is reversion fund? Or is this operating money that would have been spent maybe in the operating of the school, substitute teachers, gas, diesel fuel, repairs, that were not spent because we weren't operating in a normal school year? I have a feeling about the funds, but it's up to the board how we decide to do and what we decide to do with the 1.9.
So I guess, oh, I'm sorry, Ms.
Well, I did have a question which may add into this finances or not. Could you tell me how much money you all received for COVID upgrades and dealing with COVID, and if all that was spent?
I don't have all of the total amount. Mrs. Stevens may be able to share those exact numbers with you, but none of the COVID funding would be applicable to these jobs, to these tasks. We are able to use those CARES money or the ESSER grants to address any of these items. Otherwise, we certainly would have pulled them if they were safety items. We would absolutely have addressed them.
But for
I was under the impression that it could be used for IT purposes, so I
Say that, I'm
assumed
sorry.
you used the big chunk of it for that.
Nancy, can you restate that for us?
Yes, I thought you could use COVID money for IT purposes for the hybrid learning situation. I was just wondering if we could get a set of figures for how you dispensed the COVID funds
Sure,
and how they were utilized.
absolutely.
Because I'm sure there were a lot of upgrades in that we didn't get to see that you all accomplished this year.
Sure, we are completely comfortable providing you with the multiple sources of funding, not only from the locality. I believe you gave us approximately $1 million of the county CARES funding, which we have since moved forward with utilizing. We received our original funding source, which was between $600,000 and $700,000. That needs to be spent by September 30 of 2021, of 2022, excuse me, Marcia, please correct me. And then we just received the additional monies, the $2.8 million, but that actually has a nice time frame associated with it, and that is September 30 of 2023. And so those have not been touched as of yet, but those will be utilized for summer intervention remediation. Those will be utilized to support some air quality upgrades. We just had an air quality study done. We have about $800,000 worth of short-term needs that need to be addressed, which is an appropriate usage of those funds. And so that is currently where we are in a nutshell. But we can provide specifics, absolutely.
Right.
We can
And
use
what
some
you
of the
can
money
use it
for
for.
technology, but not this type of technology, like replacing the VoIP system or network switches. That's not permissible under CARES.
Right.
There's a certain part of technology we can dabble
But
in.
Dr. Calvert, you weren't supposed to spend it on personnel either, correct?
No, we were able to address personnel needs that
Needs,
readily.
but not on personnel. Because in your presentation, you said you hired 2 people with CARES money.
Which you are able to hire under the CARES funding. If the
Because our money
position
didn't allow
supports-
any personnel.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that,
I
because
mean,
it's been
so
advantageous
if
for
the
us.
county's CARES money was used for personnel, that's gotta be redone in a money shuffle, because our money wasn't capable of hiring any people.
We did not utilize local CARES money to support the coordinator of virtual learning, nor the additional instructional technology aid. Both of those positions were hired because they were directly correlated with a large increase in demand of caring for all of our new devices. And then also we needed an expert on our team that could oversee the development of virtual learning. And so those both were covered under our CARES dollars.
So I think we need to circle back to the 1.9. That's the
Sure,
issue.
yes.
That's the real issue of, I'm sorry, Dr. Rose.
I think a question that you've stated it twice now is the difference between the 1.967 and the 1.78.
Right, and that's the 208 number.
That is
So-
the hundred,
That's
that's the
182.
182,000 that was appropriated as 1.2. It's clarified in Mr. Kelly's letter to us.
on the back of this.
I think it says 1.7 somewhere on the back of this.
And I think you moved.
Well, anyway, let's go 1.7, well, we'll say 1.7, whatever. it is.
Yeah, it's $1,784,912.
So that's the question, the ending year of FY20, the 1,000,007, do we consider that reversion fund? Since they didn't operate, the money was not spent for operations as far as I know, and there was money that was at the year end. The average that's been turned back to the county has been 200 to 400,000. Do we say, okay, you didn't operate, we give you the 1,700,000? I think that's a discussion for our board. I think we have to have that discussion whether we do it tonight or at a later time. I think that's the issue for me.
I would think we would have to wait until we have our budget discussion, but it's reversion funds, so it should come back for us to dispense as we see fit.
And we have the money.
Right,
We have the money.
right, we have it, so,
But I want to be transparent with this board. The Reedy Church Supervisor does not believe the 1.7 should be considered reversion funds. You are not operating, it should go back to the taxpayers of Caroline County to be used in the general fund. That's what the Reedy Church Supervisor believes. If the other 5 members of this board don't believe that, then we have to have a discussion.
I don't disagree with you, so, at this point, I think that it didn't get spent in education. I can't justify sending it back since school didn't start again, and you've got two rounds of CARES money, one from us in your initial, and another 2.8 million, which is a tremendous amount of money in your budget. And I think that 1.7 needs to go back into the general fund to taxpayers that actually paid it, that have said, what are we doing?
Mr.
Help cover our budget.
Forehand, the question is, the 1.7 million that's left on the table from 2020, because I want to clear this reversion money up and get it straight to the point that everybody knows that we're on an even playing field. What's your feeling on the $1.7 million?
We split it in half.
Okay. Mr. Bly,
I think it needs to come back to us. And then if there's certain projects that we see on that list that we see fit, then we can discuss it. I'm not sure we make that decision tonight because we have to see our budget numbers. And then the other thing too is we're gonna seriously, I mean, they talk about, I see director of virtual learning stuff. The issue is we don't have internet in like a quarter of half the county. Mr. Thomas is working hard. We're gonna need to put some seed money in to get those grants. We're gonna need money, and that will help students too.
Absolutely.
So we've got costs there that would actually help the schools for our own doing some of those projects that Mr. Thomas is working on. So in order to do those value grants, we're gonna need to put some serious money into those.
absolutely. Mr. Thomas?
Well, we have Michael Jordan. That's all right. We have a couple of things here. One is the Board of Supervisors and the school board have a standing agreement that reversion funds would go back to the schools for capital projects. We actually made a mistake, and I'm the first to admit that, when we considered the insurance money reversion money. We should have never sent that back, my opinion. We should have never sent that back as reversion money and maybe have done some other things, because that's not what our standing rule was. Now, our standing rule is, again, all the reversion money you have goes back for capital projects, which is good for both of us. You have basically an incentive to save money. The Board of Supervisors then has an incentive to give you that money back for projects we're gonna have to do anyhow. This particular case, it looks like there is a large disparity in what would be the normal reversion money in this particular year.
Sure.
So I think in this particular year, we have to have a discussion amongst all of us to say what we think we should do with that money. Now that's, again, my opinion. So I'm just trying to give you my opinion and, my historical background as to what we have done, what we should do, and how to move forward from here.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. And the item that Mrs. Stevens just brought around to you was a planning process that Mrs. Stevens and I engaged in preparation for this conversation. And while we view option A, being that schools receive the remaining 1.7, we recognize that in all likelihood, based on previous conversation, that may not be the case. And so in the spirit of collaboration and compromise, we pulled together 2 different options for the board's consideration. So the first option I would like to share is the 5-year carryover average. Now, certainly we are not going to sit here and discuss the accuracies of the carryover amount, because clearly from our previous discussion, we might have some dissension amongst the ranks regarding those numbers. So I would recommend, if you like proposal B, and that's even going to be entertained, that maybe Charlie and myself and Mrs. Stevens and Mrs. Smith and Mr. Parton could come together and really refine that to ensure that there's consistency between the 5-year average of carryover. But for the sake of just sharing the idea with you, if you'll just play along with me, you can see in FY15, we believe we have approximately $420,000. In FY16, we believe that we had approximately $796,000, of which the $732,840 sounded like there was agreement between ourselves and Mr. Cully. In FY17, we did not have any carryover money remaining, which sounded different from maybe what Mr. Underwood was sharing.
And that's what's in there?
Yes,
That's
sir.
the year that the insurance went up $900,000.
No, that 0 year was and Marcia, please interject if I misspeak, and this was prior to either of us being in these positions. So when Marcia came in, she did a lot of reconciling and working with the county to come up with finalized numbers. And because we had not received the cash until FY18, we were actually spending that money thinking that we had already received the cash. So at the end of the year, we didn't have any money left because we were doing those projects that we thought we had received the cash for. So it was an awkward anomaly, but that's a simple explanation.
I like anomaly.
Yes. FY18, we believe we had about 213,000 left. In FY19, we believe we had 822,000 left, approximately. So what we did was just total up those 5 numbers, and we divided them by 5 and came up with a 5-year carryover average. So that number was $450,400, which really represents 1% of our approximately $49 million budget. So talk about like fiscal advocacy and accountability and efficiency. That's almost to the point where it makes me nervous being at that level. Having said that, when you look at the calculations, what we did is we took the $450,400, which was the 5-year average. We subtracted the $182,403 because you've already given us that money. You gave it to us on February 9th. That was a portion of the FY20 monies that you had already appropriated for those jobs on February 9th. We then added $321,789 back in because out of the total $1.9 million, $321,789 of that is an increase in state revenue that was beyond what was budgeted. So those are state monies that we feel are not local dollars. So we came up with the $589,786 is what we believe would be a fair return on the remaining monies. And that actually would equate to 39.3% of the 1.9 million coming back to schools, which would leave the county with 60% of those monies. So that's option 1, right, wrong, or indifferent in terms of agreement on the numbers. That's just a formula we wanted to propose, which comes out with a 40% for schools and a 60% for county. Okay. Option C.
Can I stop you, please?
Sure.
Again, my thought process, and after talking to my board members, the reversion or the money left over was not 1.9, it was 2.7. You chose to do a bonus in July of 2020 and a health holiday out of the ending year money. And that was 2.7 million. As a result of you paying that out in 2020, which I believe are reversion funds, and some of the members we talked about it felt that 2.7 should have been reversion fund. Then we could have discussed, well, we have the money available, we would like to do X. But again, the 1.9 for me is not an option. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wanna start at the 2.7, and that's where my thought process is. And again, I've talked to my board members.
I'm comfortable with option B, and for the, just so we can move on.
Okay.
Our goal is to close out FY20. We recognize
Yes,
that we're
that's
not
it.
getting 1.7, we know that. But we want to show compromise, and we would hope that that would be reciprocated. And quite frankly, Mr. Underwood, you know, I don't feel that continuing to indicate that we've given pandemic pay at the end of the 20 school year should be questioned. We were well within our legal right to do that, and I believe you also provided. No,
I didn't
excuse me.
question you doing it.
But
I
it
said the
wasn't
money,
part of
well, no.
reversion.
Well, don't put words in my mouth. I said there was 2.7 million at the end, and you chose to do that. I didn't say whether you should or you shouldn't. I'm saying that's what was available.
No.
So I didn't make a choice.
The money
Wasn't-
was not reversion money at that point. We were well within our right to use our operations budget to make a decision regarding pandemic pay and to make a decision regarding the health holiday. So that was prior to concluding a reversion dollar amount. And we consulted our legal attorney to verify that we were within our rights to
I
make
do
sure that we
understand.
were not counterproductive in that process.
I do understand you consulted legal, and I talked to Mr. Cully,
Right,
and we understand that it was legally done, nothing untoward.
right.
So I'm not saying that it was untoward.
So how can you
saying
negate
that it
that with stating that that truly is reversion funds when
I'm just
in
saying it
essence
was
it's
money left
not?
at the end of the year. That's my position. You have yours, I have mine. My other board members have theirs. I'm just giving you this one person's position.
Well, okay,
Okay.
and I would
And
like
I'm
for the
listening to you-
boards to
to
come
yours as
together
well.
in consensus that I think we've already established that we had $1.9 million of reversion funds to work with, and then 1.7 remains. We're not talking in the $2 million range. Right now, the numbers that we're playing with are $1.9 million minus the 182, which gets us to 1.7. That's where we need to focus our energies.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
Mr. Jones.
I would like to focus on that. I would also like to say that the pandemic pay and insurance holiday is probably a good thing, is a good
It's a good
thing
thing.
because it bumps up the teacher salaries, which is one of my goals. I wanna ask, the average teacher got how much money of that 796,000?
The pandemic pay was $1,000 per employee, regardless of your employee category.
For
Flat
every employee
$1,000, every
from,
employee minus myself,
oh, too bad. Too bad. All right, so
how I chose to do things.
So the 43,000 that we always see as the lowest salary for an employee, for a teacher,
Say that one more time.
43,000, that's the number we see as the starting salary?
No, the starting salary is $41,800 for
41.
0 years of experience.
So that teacher that was at 41 last year actually ended up getting 42.
Minus taxes and FICA, et cetera, but it does not count towards their VRS. It's a bonus, and so therefore there's not that compilation for VRS purposes. So that's why it's never a great piece to do
But
a
the bottom line
bonus
is,
versus a raise.
yeah, as far as retirement,
Correct.
if they stop teaching and become a truck driver, they're not in VRS period, so
Correct.
that's kind of, but the reality is they went from 41 to 42 minus a little bit of, retirement.
Absolutely.
Okay. My personal opinion, I like that process because it helps, again, each of us have an incentive to save more money because there's bonuses at the end of the year.
Sure.
I think maybe we all should be involved in that bonus discussion at the end of the year, even though it's totally within your rights and you have the ability to do it. But at the end of this year, in June, if you come back and say, I've got $1 million, we'd like to do this, I don't think anybody's gonna say no. I mean, I'm not gonna poll the board, but I don't think anybody would say no. I know I won't say no. It's just to make sure we know that's happening. And maybe that would ease out the question of, it's really reversion money, it's not really reversion money. It's within your right to do it. You could have made it $5,000 an employee.
I will let that be a board-to-board discussion in terms of how they want to proceed with that.
So
Yeah,
that's why I say,
No, I'm not trying to micromanage you at all. It's your right. You have the ability to do it. Maybe my concern is I would like to hear it from you first as opposed to somebody else. And I don't think that's unfair.
I appreciate your thought process. And not to oversimplify, but as I'm listening and as I've been involved for a number of years, I think we're at the place where we need to understand the separation of duty. So if the county appropriates money, approves our budget and appropriates that money for us, the school system has a board, and that board has the responsibility of making these decisions. We hire a superintendent and senior staff and a finance director that understands all the nuances and all the if this, then that, and that money is managed, it is reconciled with the county, and then what is left over after the board manages those funds is what comes back as reversion.
That's right.
The problem, in my opinion, Reedy Church, not the chair, is when board members start managing and move out of governance into management of boards that you're not on. And I mean that with respect.
And we had that discussion, and that was a good discussion.
Correct.
And that's why I said, I wanna make sure.
But no, you have to understand my perspective and my point.
And I agree with you.
I'll be happy to take my shoes off and let you walk in them for a little while. You're gonna hurt.
No, thank you. I like my boss.
But my thing is.
Your point is communication, and I agree with that.
Yeah, but that's a minor point. And, you know, I can live with and I can live with and I understand. Once we give you the money, we have nothing to do with it. But from my perspective, when we go into our budget meeting, I'm gonna stand on the table and say, we need to give teachers a raise. We need to give the staff employees, the hourly folks, a raise.
Okay.
They're gonna beat me up, or they're gonna say, yes, that's a great idea. But after I give you that X number of dollars for teacher raises, if you don't give those raises to teachers, or you do something else, then am I gonna be happy, or am I gonna be?
But I think that's a great question, and I think that's where, if we could finally turn the page in this county on misinformation or facts that are interpreted based on personal opinion and historical hurt feelings, and the question be asked, and I'm not directing.
I don't.
Okay.
My wife will tell you I don't have feelings.
Okay,
that's clear. I don't have any feelings. So.
This is not to you. I'm looking at you because you and I are talking. I will look broader around the room.
Look at me.
I will look at you. Okay? So if there is a question about where money is spent, if there is a question about our fiscal management, then by all means, I think it's a fair question. But when we present data and we are transparent as we have been, then it becomes a point in time where you're either just ignoring the fact, because you choose not to ignore the fact, but the fact has been presented. There's a lot of things that have run around this county that are not true, that could easily be resolved with a question asked and listening for the answer.
Absolutely. That's why when we met, the very first meeting, and I saw that there were over $1,039,000 from 16, 17, 18, 19, I came back and I said, we need to see if we can get this money to you. Right?
It needs to be resolved, so it's not
resolved.
constantly kicked down the road.
I told you my concern was operating in 2020, not a normal year, not normal money being spent,
Okay.
being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. I have an obligation to say, in a normal year of schools, I would give you the reversion money, because it's $200,000, $300,000. You've done a good job with that money. This is not a normal year. I give you $500 to buy groceries, and all of a sudden, all the groceries in the store are on discount, and you come back to the table with $150. Ooh, we saved $150. My position is, the taxpayers of the county would be happy that we save that money to utilize for sometimes part of school, sometimes part of fire and rescue, some may need for a sewer line in Carmel Church, $13 million. They're gonna say, oh, they're being responsible, but if I just say this money is returned in not a normal year, we have an opportunity to put out fires across the county, show taxpayers that we are responsible. The county does not keep this money. We divvy it out again. Goes right back into the general fund to be used for the betterment of the county. And the school is part of that. That's my concern regarding 2020.
So I think we have several points of agreement.
Yes, we do.
Can you make me happy too?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate, Dr. Rollins-Fellows, would it be appropriate for me to review option C just as an additional option for
We never
consideration?
got to those two,
Yeah.
Well,
or those three.
Oh, I'm so
well, to
sorry.
that point, that's why we're having the conversation, so we're clarifying what's carryover. If it is in agreement, because I never heard consensus on that the number is the 1.7 and not 2.
That's how I feel. I'll go with 1.7 to make us happy, right? I'm okay with
We
that.
already gave them the two,
Yeah,
it's already there.
yeah, they already did, yeah.
The 182.
The one we've spent.
We spent, yeah. So,
So-
1.7.
So if you look
1.7.
at, but Mr. Saley, if you look at our math, we know that, so there's no shell game going on here. It's 1.967. We got that number because we added the FY18, we
No, I
added.
get where
the-
I get where it came, we all agree where it came from, I'm saying we've already given 182 from the 1.9, so we're at 1.7. That's the floor.
So I hear
We're all in
consensus.
agreement.
I mean,
We're
so
all-
there's
we're all
no
in
point
agreement, right?
rehashing how we got there.
I think I heard option B, we can move on.
Now,
Thank you. So option B, what we did with option B is hearing your concern and saying, okay, well, if it's not a consensus that the reversion money that we sent back is indeed 100% our reversion money, and you're saying it's not a regular operating year, so on average, that's the 5-year average, so that's where B comes from.
I got you, I understand it. Shit. Okay, I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with it, but I understand what the numbers and the data.
Well, we're doing additional, we're still got the ball field to do, so I don't know why we're haggling over 250,000, because we're gonna spend additional money out of the 1.7 for the ball field. So I don't know why we're here trying to figure out what we're gonna do with 300,000, because we can't give you any more money until we get further down the road. We all agreed that we needed to give you money to get started. We came up with 1.2 plus. Those projects are underway. So I don't know why we're gonna sit here. We've got the softball field that Mr. Whiteman and your team is still working on, which is gonna be still more money. So I don't know why we're stuck talking about 589,000 or 988,000, which is the two other options, when we're still not done. I mean, so you're saying don't do the ball field? Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Sealy, no one has said that, and
No,
no
but
one
if we
also has
keep
numbers
going,
associated with that
but if
project.
we keep going, that's where we're gonna end up, because the money's gonna be somewhere else, and it's not gonna be there for that.
Has Mr. Whiteman provided you with a document outlining the cost of the
Zero.
project?
No, but we're sitting here tonight trying to spend money
Totally.
that none of us know
We're
about.
gonna come back to you guys
No,
first.
I think it's about resolving the reversion.
No, it's not resolving, we're not resolving anything, we're haggling, we're actually haggling like in a market over the cost of something. And we're gonna spend money that nobody's gonna be happy with, because there's gonna be something else that crops up. We're gonna be looking at each other going, we already gave you the money, yeah, but we need this.
We're actually trying to compromise, and so these two options that we're presenting represent compromise and
I don't see
collaboration
there's a compromise at
versus a
this
standard
point.
no to the $1.7 million that
and I
are
think-
truly operations funds that became reversion monies.
And-
So there's no haggling, we're doing our due diligence, we're charged to do this process.
And I think, Dr. Calvary said it right. We're discussing it, whether it's a no, and the money goes back to reversion completely. When they're saying we'd like to have a piece of the pie, is what they're saying.
But I'm saying we're not done yet.
But I'm just saying, but for reversion money, for this money here, that we're considering reversion money, that's what we're calling it now, because it is leftover money from school.
You agree we're not done here?
I'm sorry, Nancy, I was being quiet, let you
No,
speak.
let's, no, I agree with you, we got the 178,4,912 that we agreed upon. We need to see our budget, we need to talk to Mr. Reitman, we need to look at the rest of the things on here. We have to look at every other department we have in this county and come back and do a complete budget and make decisions and cuts just like we have to do every year. I don't think we need to decide on A, B, or C that was just handed to us tonight. I think we need to move on
Okay,
and
that's their
get the
comp, right?
information we need to work on our budget in total.
Okay, that's fine. So they want us to consider items, A, B, and C if we decide to give them their compromise in terms of the 1.7.
And I'm saying I don't think we can do that.
This is their
tonight.
I'm just,
Yeah.
no, give me up. We don't have to have a discussion this evening. We gave them the 1.2, you're moving along. I still would like to put this to bed sooner than later in terms of reversion fund.
Where does the 1.2 come from?
The 1.2 comes from the monies that were left over before.
Oh, what number? What
Okay.
number does the 1. Does it come from the $3 million number?
Yes,
Okay. So then we're
1
saying-
million, the 1 million that we actually gave them 1.2,
1.2 and change.
1.2 and change came out of the 3,000,003 number.
So there's 1.8 left over.
There's 1.
Out of that,
Right, 1.7 million is left over.
okay.
That's what we're discussing. The 1.7 that's left over, we put the 1.7 back in the general fund and say, this is not a normal year, or do we agree to look at their options, which we'll look at their options, A, B, and C, to determine if we want to do that or not, okay?
And option B says you get 450,000 more from the 1.7.
Yes,
Option B states that we would get
Oh, 589,786, right,
$589,786,
the
which
rest.
acknowledges the fact that $321,789 of the 1.7 is actually state money that was provided beyond what was budgeted. And so those monies we're respectfully requesting be returned to us, since that is state funding versus local dollars. However, that is certainly something that we can have discussion about.
Go a little slower for me, please.
Sure, so when you are
But
looking
wait,
at the option B calculation row,
Yeah.
right below the green,
Well, I mean, that I see.
okay,
I just want to go slow to make sure I understand.
right.
And I'll feel much better if I understand. So, of that 589 that you want back, you're including 321 of additional state revenue that you got, I guess, from sales tax being higher or whatever was higher. Or was it sales tax?
Sales tax was higher, 130-some thousand, and we also received special education money
Okay.
above budget.
And that
So-
is included in the 1.7.
That was your money in last year's budget. It's part of the 1.7 now. You want that 300 back because of something else.
Right.
Plus you want
182.
182 from the county.
No, that is subtracted from the 450,400. The 450,400 was the 5-year average. We subtracted the 182,403
That we already
because
gave
you
you.
already gave us that on February
Okay.
9th.
Okay.
And so that's how the 589 was developed,
So if I add all that up to 589,
which is about 40% coming to schools.
Is what we're looking for schools, and the remainder of 1.195, so almost $1.2 million would remain to the county.
so 600,000,
The one
1.1
thing-
and change.
The one thing that's still floating out there that isn't accounted for in either number is the softball field. And we don't know what that number is yet.
Well, that's something,
I've already
that's
talked
something I
to
think
Mr.
we're gonna
Whiteman.
hold,
Yeah,
we're gonna hold
we're gonna
on to
hold
that
that
anyhow.
regardless.
Agreed, however, my understanding is that we were gonna do the project out of these funds, not,
Correct.
Right.
That was my point.
so that's an X factor that we have no idea, is it gonna be $50,000 or is it gonna be $150,000?
Well, they thought it was gonna be 200,000.
Or 200,000.
So we're gonna assume at least 200,000 of that money is in reserve for the softball field. We expect it'll be a lot less than that, and then we'll have another discussion about what to do with whatever's left from that 200,000.
So that's the 589 includes, as I see it, includes what we will spend to redo the softball. Does that
I
make sense?
don't think they think
That's
so.
what I just.
No, they don't.
That is not how we viewed that,
Yeah.
because we were not aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and board
Okay, let's
member
go on to the
or
budget.
Mrs.
Can we
Stevens.
go on to the budget, Mr. Chairman,
Wait,
because
let me let her.
I think I've heard enough
wait.
tonight.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Colley.
one thing. And this is not about the B option or C option or whatever, because I haven't seen any of that. But reversion funds, to start looking at, well, this was state money versus not. When you have money left over at the end of the year, we don't know exactly where all that money has come from.
Sure.
And so I would caution the board to start looking at,
Give a
well, we
motion, we
made this
don't
state
move on.
money, therefore it was all
We just need a
ours.
motion to be done.
We spent your county money first. We don't know what money got
So
spent
we need a
other
motion
than
to hold the
total
1.7 and be
of
done
all
with
the money they got for operations. And this is what's
Then the work
left. That's
session
the way
will be
we've
something.
always looked at it.
Hmm?
You know,
We have not divided
just
that
say
up
we're
amongst
gonna hold
state
on to
dollars
that.
or that. I hear what they're saying, that they had all the state dollars
Yeah.
and they thought,
Let's move on.
but how do we know they didn't spend state dollars and we have our county money left over? That's the only caution I have.
Oh, I've been there, buddy.
Hearing this discussion about the state money.
Same thing.
That's a fair point, Mr. Colley.
This any longer.
It's a fair
Okay.
point.
That's funny.
That's why another year I would.
Okay, I think we've beaten this.
Can we move on to the budget, because we've already spent
So we're
over.
going to the,
Mr. Underwood, before we close that, would you mind, are there any questions regarding option C? We did not discuss that, but that is the removal of the pandemic pay and the insurance holiday from the $1.7 million. We know that that was a point of discussion both previously and tonight. And we also subtracted the 182, which had already been allocated. That does leave 988 coming back to schools, which means we would get 60% and the county would keep 40. So it's almost a reverse percentage of
I don't
option
think we need to
B.
discuss that.
So just so we,
I
just
think
so
Mr.
you know,
Vogel has a
it's
question.
there,
I
it's
think Mr.
there.
Vogel has a question for you.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm just holding my hand here. So
all right, then it's obvious we have some points to discuss and some, and it still revolves around the $1.7 million that are reversion funds and what we do with that. And we'll move on to the next item if that's okay.
Is it fair to say if Mr. Whiteman is able to develop an approximate cost to the softball field prior to the March 9th board meeting, that we could put this on for resolution? We want to draw FY20 to a close. I know you do.
I don't think so.
What would be a timeline that would be appropriate, Mr.
I don't know. I'm gonna
Underwood?
talk
Because we
these-
want to have this
I know.
solved before FY21 reversion begins.
Believe me, I would have resolved it tonight.
Okay,
I would have resolved it, and you probably wouldn't have liked it, so.
right.
I think I need to hear from, let the rest of my board members convince me of what they'd like to do.
Sure.
And get it back to you, if we can get it on there, I'm not gonna promise, but that was my hope for tonight, is to say, hey, look, this is where we are. We're even playing field, and we're gonna start from here, but we can't get there unfortunately. So,
Hey, can I ask another quick question?
yes, sir.
That 2.8 million you talked about as CARES money that you just got?
Yes.
Can I use some of that money for broadband? May I?
I don't believe that we can, but we certainly can look at the ability to tap into that.
Okay, can was
So-
the right word.
Future conversation. I don't have those details memorized, but it's certainly something to investigate.
Because you have a long time, and I know before we had restrictions of the project had to be finished
Right.
before, but I think that's something maybe we can share, because we're gonna get that to students.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that at another time,
If the
Mr.
board
Thomas.
doesn't mind, I can talk directly with you or
Yeah.
Mrs. Stevens.
I'm fine with
I'm
that.
fine with
Andrea Ross, our Director of Federal Programs, oversees that federal program as well, so she also should be involved in that conversation.
Oh, and not Mr. Bowman?
Mr. Bowman, absolutely, if we're going to talk technicalities with broadband, but if we're just looking to see if that's a feasible use of funds, then we need Ms. Ross and Mrs. Stevens and myself.
For grant regulars.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We're gonna do item number 3, the compensation proposal, and then we'll come back to the budget. We want to discuss, FY21 compensation. I do think there is still some disagreement about, here we go again, monies for compensation study. When Dr. Parker was here, I think it's on your slide. When when Dr. Parker was here, we agreed in principle to fund the compensation study 3 years at $600,000 for a total of $1,000,008 is what we agreed to. That was the number that was there. In the first year, you have your, that's the slide coming. In your first year.
It's in your packet as
Yeah,
well.
no, I had it somewhere else. In your first year, there we go. In your first year of the salary study, it is our contention, of course, by your number, that you spent $848,727 year one. Year two, you spent $1,026,292. Our board feeling is that we agreed to give you the $1.8 million, that the fact that you spent it in 2 years, you managed the money. It was up to you to determine how you spent that money. You spent the 1.8 million, that money is gone. Now, for us, when we discussed it with Dr. Parker, I think the goalpost moved when you came in to talk about step increases, and that was not part of the original agreement. Our agreement was to give you $600,000 over 3 years, and you spent it over the 2 years. Therefore, and I realize, and this board realizes, as I talk to my board members, we understand that it did not bring you up to 2020 standards or 2021 standards. But and Mr. Cully can address that. But I heard a board member, school board member say the Board of Supervisors didn't give you the money for the salary study. It's not true. It's not true. We gave you exactly what you asked for. If you add the FY19, FY20 together, that's a little over $1.8 million. That's what you asked for over the 3-year period. So you say don't manage your money? Well, you manage your 1.8, we continue spend it. So I'm open for discussion on that. Dr. Phelps and Dr. Kemper.
Sure. I think I would like to address the circle chart that you are referencing first, and then included in some of the materials that you received is a copy of the Evergreen study that I think we probably want to revisit, or at least a portion of it, so that we have clarity of discussion regarding maybe some historical conversations that I wasn't present for, but have certainly heard perspectives regarding. So in relation to your comment associated with the 1.8 million, which I would assume is the 600,000 times 3 on the 3-year implementation. If you look at the circle graph, we received $400,000 of local money in FY19 and $562,000 of local money in FY20. So that totals $962,000 of money used for compensation.
But I don't think, okay,
And
I'm
so
sorry.
that does not equate to the 1.8
Okay.
million that you were referencing. So just so that we know there is that
That's your
difference.
thought, okay.
Okay.
The study was, what we were requesting wasn't local money, it was total money.
Right, and
And
I was gonna,
1.6, the chart that the schools gave us was they needed 902, 930 in the first year, they needed 902, 930, 359, 049, and 344, 849. You broke it over to 3 years for class day parity.
Right, Mr. Cully, I don't know what you are privy to in terms of documents, but if you have the chart that comes from the study, okay, and I don't.
2/13/2018.
Right.
They were talking about what they needed.
Sure, and I think that was shared with us as well, and I noted the date on that. It was a PowerPoint slide. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, if you enlarge that document that you shared with your board, it was a PowerPoint slide from Evergreen Studies, and in February, that was a preliminary report, and that was not the finalized data. And so we need to be working from the finalized study, and the finalized study actually states, and you have a copy of this within your document. So if everyone looked at the Board of Supervisor request 3-year compensation study explanation, this document was actually shared with you last year during this time when the same conversation was occurring. We had the conversation on January 28th, 2020 at our joint board meeting, and you requested that we provide a more thorough explanation to your board regarding compensation. So we provided this explanation to you on February 7th, 2020. And in the front of that document, it shows that to achieve the minimum market value of 2018 salaries, that can only be done in 1 year. You can't do minimum market value in anything but 1 year.
But Dr.
So you
Calvert,
have to do class date parity.
yeah,
To do class date parity over 3 years, the first year requires $1,116,736,000. The second year requires $406,789. The third year requires $496,000. But the point that's really important to note is none of that addresses cost of living, years of experience adjustments, other divisions or employers providing raises, employer required benefits. So none of that is included within those numbers.
Dr. Calvert, I agree with all your caveats.
Okay.
That was not included in this and that. But again, I was here when this conversation took place.
Sure.
I agreed that we were gonna give you the 1.8 million over the 3-year period. That's what was asked. Now, if we're not where we wanna be, then let's say we're not where we wanna be, but I'm sick and tired of hearing the board did not give you the money they say they were gonna give you. This is just, and I'm being transparent and I'm not sugarcoating it. Absolutely, teachers need more pay. That's not even the discussion. I wanna get to the
But we
again,
did
to the
include
foundation.
benefits because we gave additional money
Right.
for insurance 2 of those years. So
I know.
to say that there was no compensation contribution isn't
Right,
true either.
Right, we'll come back, that's true, but I just wanna get the salary piece done first. I want your board to know that we gave you what you asked for. Whether you didn't ask for the right amount, that is not the concern of this board yet. So I wanna start from ground zero, that my board and I discussed. We gave you what you asked for, you say, okay, it's not enough, doesn't meet 2021 standards. Dr. Rollins and I discussed it. Dr. Rollins agrees that it does not meet the 2021 standard. But the reality of it is, what you asked for, we gave it to you.
Mr. Underwood, could we clarify that statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, going back to the circle graph. If stating what you believe to be what was articulated prior to me being in this position was
Correct.
that it was $600,000 times 3 years for implementation, correct? So it would have been 600,000 in FY19, 600,000 in
No, no, no.
FY20, and 600,000 in FY21.
18, 19,
18,
20.
19.
18, 19, 20.
18, 19, and 20.
We began the salary implementation in 19.
We're talking salary study.
Right, the study started in 2018, but implementation was FY19, FY20, FY21.
Mr. Collier, are we correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. It was FY19, FY20, FY.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Which one of those years has the big insurance one? 19, right?
yes, because you not only appropriated money in the first round, but in a second round, you came back and afforded us, I wanna say $350,000 to use towards insurance, which we
Back
did.
in, right.
Yes, and we were grateful, that was the largest appropriation we had received.
FY20.
FY20, thank you.
But that doesn't count in the circle chart you showed us?
No, because that was for health insurance, this is salary. This is salary.
You just said that we needed to have benefits and everything else added in, so which way is it?
No, I'm saying
No,
that
you
these
just,
do
no,
not,
I'm
Mr.
going back to
Sealy.
what you just said, that benefits and compensation and all that was all rolled in. Those were your words, not mine. You just said them. We can go back to the videotape and play.
I would love to, because I was documenting what was noted at the bottom of the sheet, which clearly states that none of these additional items are included in the amount of the graph of the Evergreen study. So, Mr. Underwood, am I able to write
Yes,
some numbers in the board?
absolutely.
Okay,
Look,
terrific.
I'm a visual learner, that's
I
why I
love
do
it.
that.
Me too, but I like color coding too,
Right.
so, okay. So, in FY '19, we had 448,000. Oh, no, excuse me, that's
From
the state number.
that's the state number.
Yeah.
Use the eraser, yeah.
There we go. From local dollars, we received $400,000,
Got it?
okay? For that fiscal year, all right? In FY '20, okay,
562.
we received for local dollars, we received 562. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we can all be in agreement that over that 2 years, in addressing year 1 and year 2 of the salary scale study, we received 962,000.
From the county.
From the county.
Right, from the county, absolutely.
Right.
From the county, of local dollars, so I'll label it local, right? What I heard you say was that you stated that we would receive 600,000.
Not from the county. The total monies that you would receive for benefits would be, for salary increases, would be 600,000.
Now, that is the first time I have heard that interpretation.
Mr. Cully?
Who said no?
That was what we, that was the document that we understood, was you need this amount of money that added up to $1,606,829. And one of the other things, and if we were working from a preliminary, that's what we were given. The recommendation for the teacher starting salary in that paperwork we were given in 2018 was $42,672. And then what you gave us last year when you asked for the $1.5 million additional money was starting teacher pay to be $43,322, which was not a number from back in 2018, and that's $650 more per starting, per teacher. That wasn't in that information that the board dealt with in 2018. And I know you weren't here.
Right.
But that was the understanding. If you had not gotten any state money, we were on the hook to get you $1,606,829. But with state money, you had got $1,874,956. So that's what Mr. Underwood's talking about.
Okay, so thank you for that explanation, and now I'm hearing what you're saying in relation. I do state that I would like to call upon many of our board members from the school side to indicate if there was any level of understanding associated with that $600,000 regarding that being a compilation of state and local, or if there's a document that could support that.
Document right there.
Yeah, I don't have that one with me.
Yeah, you do.
What is that that you're looking at?
That's from you guys from
That's the
2018.
preliminary.
That's your
Oh, that's the
presentation.
preliminary visual,
From
correct.
2018.
Right, that's the preliminary. But does that state that that's a combination, Mr. Black, of state and local dollars?
It just says cost option.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Bring the minimum, and we got this from Mr. Cully.
Sure, oh, absolutely, we've seen it. I just wanted to know if that wording was on there, because that is the first time I'm hearing, but it provides clarity as to why you've been
That's the
saying
issue.
that statement. So we have not been viewing that from that interpretation, because we can't control what the state gives, and so obviously that is not an approach that we would, in today's conversation, be utilizing. I don't know what occurred under Dr. Parker's leadership, but that would not be something we would do.
Mr. Thomas.
The state funds are used for a multiple of things. It's not just compensation, but we've had the past couple of years having to really put it into compensation and health insurance, and that's what's been balancing the budget.
Okay, there's two things there. One which is really the second thing I wanted to say, but since you brought it up, we, the county, all of us, often get the extra bill for non-SOQ people, because the state gives a raise for standards of quality people.
Correct.
And then the county has to put in the same amount for all of your people that don't count as that.
Correct.
We have to do the same for the sheriff and whatnot, because you get X number of deputies, we got twice as many, so the county pays all of the second half salary. The other question, which is really the question, is when you say you need X amount of dollars for teacher raises, do you care where that money comes from?
Repeat that question for me. Would be-
When you say you need X amount of dollars for teacher raises, do you care where that money comes from?
I don't know that I could answer without having further discussion. Yes, we do care where the money comes from.
Well, if you needed $600,000
Right.
for raises this year, do you care whether that money comes from the state or do you care whether that money comes from the county? You just care that you got $600,000, right?
I think we agree that we want to achieve the end goal, and if the end goal demonstrates a commitment from the state that's greater than the local dollar, then that is the situation that we're dealing with that year, or vice versa.
Then
Can I add one thing to it? If you look, I don't have the documents in front of me, but I'm pretty sure in a couple of those years, the General Assembly had state raises for teachers that we had to have some match to, because we were doing this compensation study, we had to match for the schools to bring down those additional state dollars for raise, that were earmarked for raise. I'll go back and do that research if you want. I'm pretty sure at least one of those years, there was significant dollars for raises from the General Assembly.
And I think,
Because we were putting in this match, we had to match.
and that's something we always have to do, match either the non-SOQ people or the strings the state attaches.
Correct.
You get a 2% raise if the county
Correct.
matches it another 2%.
Right. Yeah,
So-
we have approximately 369 SOQ positions, and the other 300 positions are non-SOQ.
Right.
And so there is a large dollar
To balance.
amount attached to that. You are exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I care where the money comes from, because I'd like it to come from the state.
Of course.
But, you know, the end result is like you said, all we really care about is the end result. So what's the number for this year?
So-
End result.
Right, so for this year, we are looking for, and I think it would be premature to talk about this year without discussing the current year that we are in.
Okay, this
So,
current year.
okay, so are we on the same page? We're talking FY '21. We had delayed a salary, rightfully so. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We're assuming we're going to experience a large, I'm going to sit down, I feel silly standing, excuse me. You know, we were completely understanding level of funding, and we were actually grateful to not be experiencing a decline in our local dollars. So I want to say that again publicly. But obviously we have the luxury now of being a number of months out from March 13th when the shutdown occurred. And so we have a better understanding of our sales tax revenue. We know what we're potentially going to be seeing from the state, although we're still in special session and there's still some unknowns. And so we would like for us to revisit the conversation that I think had been proposed by the Board of Supervisors, which was that we would come back together in January, see where we were in relation to our sales tax revenue, and discuss whether a mid-year salary increase was feasible. Because we still need to do that year 3 2018 minimum market value component. Our staff, many of them are not at the 2018 minimum market value. And I did share with you, and I certainly don't want to spend an ample amount of time on this, but I've shared with you in your packet some of the neighboring divisions' proposed budgets, or proposed increases. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that if we don't take a look at FY '21 and we negate that year, that we haven't reached FY 2018 minimum market value, and we're compounding the gap. We're already the 14th out of the 16 lowest salary for 0 and 5 years of teaching. And our neighbors to the north and to the south specifically as well, if you take a look, Caroline is, of course, requesting the 5% for FY '21 and the 5% for FY '22, and it's on the back of this line graph. So if you look at the line graph and you look at the chart on the back, if we were able to make tremendous headway in a year where we think we have a 0% increase in health insurance, we don't have any VRS increases, we don't have any what's the group life insurance increases, we could make some major headway with salary. And that would put us at a starting salary of $44,877. Spotsy is proposing 6% for all. This has changed since the article that was in the newspaper and that I provided to you this evening. That would put their starting salary around $46,640. Stafford is proposing a greater than or equal to 5% increase for teachers with an average of 7.2, with the highest being 9%, and all other employees outside of the teacher pool are getting between 5 to 10%. Hanover is proposing a 2.5 to a 6%, which would put their starting salary at $45,973. Henrico, if you've been watching the news, Henrico has just done a tremendous media blitz regarding their desire to be the #1 pay, county in the region, both for their educators, but also for their fire, EMS, sheriff's department, police. And so they're experiencing at least 6.9% for teachers, plus 38% are getting longevity bonuses, and all others are getting a minimum of 4.4%. Chesterfield is getting an average of 5.5. They're already at $45,792 for a starting salary. Fredericksburg City is looking for 4%. King George is looking for 2.5 to 4.5, and Essex is looking for 4% for their teachers. So I share that just to kind of help you understand that if we don't capitalize on this year, that there will be a drastic gap that will almost be impossible to recover from. So I thought that was important to share this evening as well.
And these numbers are what each specific board is proposing for their teacher increases, right?
Yes, with the
5%,
exception
whatever.
of Henrico and Chesterfield, they're working in tandem with their board of supervisors, so they have announced that in partnership.
Okay, now the state has a 5% salary increase proposal in the House version. And they have a 3% salary increase in the Senate version. So those two haven't come together yet.
They have not.
So I'm assuming the floor is 3% and the ceiling is 5%.
I would agree with that, and we won't know, of course, until the conclusion of special session.
So my question is, do I give you 2% if it's at the floor of 3, or I'm giving you more than 5% because the ceiling is 5? You want a 5% raise. I want you to get a 5% raise.
Sure.
This goes back to my question of where does the money come from?
Right.
If the state gives you a 5% raise, the county doesn't have to give you a raise to get your 5% raise. Is that what you're saying?
If the state says that over the 2-year biennium that staff, standards of quality staff should get a 5% raise, they will give us the money associated with those standards of quality positions.
Right.
The local dollars would supplement to cover all of those
We may have we have to match the non-SOQ people. Well, we don't have to.
I mean, that's what you would want.
We don't have to. You
No,
want us to.
absolutely.
Right.
We would hope, because I think,
Yeah.
like you, when we give raises, we like to be consistent
So, yes.
if possible.
But my question is, if the state gives that 5%, the county doesn't have to give anything extra to the standard of quality people, right?
I'm going to turn to Marcia to make sure. I'm not certain
That's
I'm
right.
following.
You
what
want a
you're
5% raise. If the state
Right.
gives you a 5% raise, all the county has to do is match the non-SOQ people.
Okay, and that's different than the way I interpreted the way you said it the first time. Yes, if they give us a 5% raise, they can, depending on their language, sometimes they write in there, there's a local match required on
Right.
that 5%, and then sometimes they don't, and there's no match required, but you only get it for the SOQ. So yes, there would be local support required for us to be able to give a full 5% raise to all employees.
And to make sure you understand my thinking, I understand that we're on the hook for the non-SOQ people, okay? But if the state gives you a 5% increase, all I have to pay for is the non-SOQ people 5%.
Correct. We will be able to tell you exactly what the state is giving us
All right,
for the
let me
5%
finish.
salary.
If the state only gives you 3%, we need to come up with 2% for the SOQ people and the 5% for the non-SOQ people. Right? We all agree?
That's correct.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
So,
That's correct.
and that I think would be exactly what is reflected in Circle 1 and Circle 2. That we took the state money and then what they provided was supplemented by what you shared with us to reach the goal that we had identified, okay? It doesn't equate to 600,000, which now we have clarity on your interpretation of that, but it does achieve year 1 and year 2, which was FY19 and FY20. What we don't want to see happen is us not to conclude that 3-year study for FY21, because we know that FY21, even if we met that with the 1.5 million that would require, and that has no state dollars attached to it, so it's a large ask, that is only reaching the minimum market value of 2018. And so we know we still have work to do. So we are coming forward and saying we have to finish year 3, but then we also need to do our due diligence with FY22 because otherwise other divisions around us will be moving forward with raises and will only be achieving the 2018 minimum market value.
Last question. Is it possible, Mrs. Stevens, that you could provide us with a number for what 1% for the non-SOQ people equates to? And then I could just multiply by 2, 3, and 4.
Certainly, once we receive our template from the state, I'll be able to tell you exactly what the state is funding and what we would need to be funding now.
Well,
So
you
this
don't need the
1.5,
state number.
you ought to know that now.
You don't need the state number.
the
You
state
should
does
know.
not have any amount in there. at
No,
this
no,
time.
no, you ought to know right now.
So a 1% would be for all our positions.
No.
Yeah, I'm asking for
Right.
1% for non-SOQ.
Right, and our positions, it's not broken up that simple.
It's
This,
not?
no, it's not.
Unfortunately.
Why-
There are
why not?
portions of positions.
There's portions of
partial
positions that they fund. So for me to pull each particular person,
Okay,
But we-
but then you still have a number.
We calculate half of FTE or 3/4, we can do that. I mean, 2 halves is a whole.
It does, we would like to think it's that simplistic.
It is, okay.
and it's at the prevailing rate, also, and it also brings in the composite index.
It's gonna be very important for our board, I'm sure, to know what that number is, so we know how much of the apple we're gonna have to bite.
It's not fair. This is what I'm.
I can certainly provide the state template and show you that all the SOQ positions and what were funded.
Okay, but you said before you had 360 SOQ people?
And that was and that's not the exact number.
I mean, I'm just ballparking right now.
Yeah, so we have
And I just wanna be in the neighborhood.
68.74 support positions that are SOQ related. And that is, let's see, is it a total, Marcia, of 300.5?
It is for the instructional.
Total, not added together.
No, the 300.5 is the instructional.
Is that just to be clear, is it 300.5 instructional and 68.74 support? So it is a total of the 368, no, whatever, 68.74 and 300.5 equals.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I will certainly be able to provide you the template.
We just want a number.
I've done as much math as
Which
I
has a
pretend
number
to do.
on it, I will be able
We
to
just need,
provide
we
that.
just need one number that you pay for
What?
non-SOQ,
What 1% is.
and then what 1% increase for those folks are. And then we'll do the 2, 3, 4, 5.
We can do the math on that,
So once we get that one number times 1%, that's all we need.
Okay.
We don't need the template, just that number, whatever, however big, or.
I need the template to be able to give.
Well, you need it,
Yeah.
yes, you need it, I'm saying, we don't have to go into that
Correct.
detail.
But you
Okay.
got a template now,
We
right?
have the template on the governor's, which includes no salary increase.
But you have a
It includes
template for the
bonus.
current fiscal year you're in.
Oh, absolutely,
sure.
there was no increase.
So in the current fiscal year you're in, you could tell us what 1% is. Because you have the
There is
template.
no
Well,
funding
there was
from
no
the state.
funding from the state for salaries, so therefore there's no calculation in the calc tool for that. We
So I
could
can
look
tell you
in
what a
there
1%
prior.
bonus is, because they're all non-SOQ at that time, because there was no raise.
No, so we need the non-SO.
No, I
So,
know.
all right,
It
so
should
what
be
was the
out within the
question?
next 10 to 15 days.
So the question, you have the template now for non-SOQ people, correct? With, that, because you didn't give a pay rate. Didn't give
Well, I
a
need to call and.
salary increase, correct?
That is not how the state template comes in. It does not break down the funding. There is a separate section that has the SOQ positions. And
you
it
have
has
that for
position
2020.
numbers, it does not have dollars.
Right, and you have that for 2020,
I do have it
Correct.
for 2020, and there was no raise. So there was no
Right.
state funding
so
for
there
a
was
raise.
there was no dollar figure attached to those positions.
That's your basic aid formula, which is based on your ADM.
Right. Okay,
So there was no compensation supplement in the FY '20 for those SOQ positions.
And again, I think the governance versus administration aspect is where we are navigating through right now. We will share with you what we have access to, and hopefully that will answer your question.
but I'm asking about non-SOQ positions, not the SOQ positions, which are tied to your composite index. Your lost my train of thought. Those positions that are non-SOQ are not tied to your composite index. That's funded by every taxpayer here.
Correct, but
So you have that information. The ones that will be based on, as you say, the SOQ are the composite index individuals.
You
As
start,
to whether it goes up or down.
you start with your total employees, you subtract out your SOQ employees, you then have your non-SOQ employees.
And they just want to take 1% of that number.
I dealt with this for 20
Correct,
years.
I know,
With SOQs,
exactly.
non-SOQs. I understand how the SOQ formula works and the composite index. And the calculated employees, bus drivers, all of the non-compensation. Okay. I'm gonna let you have it your way for now. But I think it should be very simple to give us a number of non-SOQ persons' salary, and we simply multiply a 1% increase based on that number, and then we'll do it times 2%, times 3%, times 4%, and we should be able to look at it relatively quickly, relatively easy. That's my position. All right.
Because at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out who the county is paying for.
Well, we're gonna pay for the non-SOQ.
No, we're trying to figure out
How
how
much-
much money
how much
it's
money
gonna
you need?
cost to give you raises.
Give you, yeah, so we get,
That's
I
all.
get that that's the point that we're getting to.
right, that's the end result. How much do we have to, if the state only funds your SOQ positions, and we have to give you money for non-SOQ, how much money do we need? Let's say they, like Floyd said, they give them 5%. We wanna give the non-SOQ people 5%. What's that number, what does that number look like from the county?
And I think from the school perspective, and Marsha, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking, because we look at the whole pool, we're saying, what do we need to do to get all of our employees?
That's what we're trying to get to.
That's what we're trying to
get to get everybody.
Yeah,
But the number is different because
It's
that
a
one,
line, it is a line item.
right, because one pot of money comes from the state at 5%, let's say. That doesn't include your SOQ, your non-SOQ.
It can. The other thing is,
So
if
they
the
can
state
know.
only gives you 3%, we'll know what that
We know
number
what we,
is.
for us to
Plus, we
give
know we
you
need 2 more percent. Then I need,
Which is
Correct.
what you calculate.
It is, it's 1.660 million for a 5% increase, and once we get the state template to know how much they will be funding us for compensation, we will subtract it from that $1.660 million, and that will be the remaining amount for non-SOQ.
And for FY '21, the 1.5 million is a
That's your
standalone
total
because
cost.
there are no state funds for
Right.
FY '21.
Okay.
But that is year 3 of the evergreen compensation study to
I
meet
just-
minimum market value.
I think the problem is you guys are working on a draft.
Yeah, but why does 22 cost more than 21 if 22 is only non-SOQ employees?
The state gives money,
It's not, Mr. Sealy, this is reflective
that's
of
what the state funds you.
the total cost.
Okay. State fund me at 25.
It's more
They don't fund
because
me
you're
at all.
building on top of a higher salary. So you're given 5% for FY '21, and then you're given an additional 5%, so it's a little bit more when you're building on top.
So that's SOQ and non-SOQ?
That is all employees.
Correct, it's all employees.
Right, I understand that. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I agree with you.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna need some more work, obviously.
Sure, and we, like I said, we hear your question and we will provide you with whatever we have access to. We'll go back and look, and if it meets your question, great, and if not, you can ask it again and hopefully we can look for a different data point, or hopefully at that point, the calc tool will be in and we'll have accurate information to provide.
and if I'm there, you don't think that's micromanaging, do you?
Charlie's got a question.
All right, you don't think that's micromanaging, let me get back
So the
there.
board is considering retroactive pay back to July 1 for 21, for the 1.5 million. That, instead of, if you were gonna do something, do it for the last quarter of this, budget year, and then look at 22 moving forward, because that's a lot different number.
You're right, Mr. Colley. We had actually asked for the salary increase to begin during the month of approval. So we did not ask to go back to July 1. So that would save money in the FY '21 budget. But obviously, we would need the commitment to fund a full year of salary moving forward. So that money, that full amount would need to roll forward into FY '22. But for FY '21, there would be that cost savings there. And I do believe, Marcia, please jump in. Off the top of my head, when we shared that with you at a previous meeting, we shared it was around 900,000. That would cover what month to June 30?
January.
January. So it was to begin in January, which of course is now, retroactive. But we're certainly open for discussion regarding partial 21. But it would require that ongoing commitment of funding.
How about end of year money counting towards that?
You can't do that. It's already in the voters. You can't take monies that are in there and put it back in there again.
We wish.
The bonus, that's the thing, I like the bonus thing.
A bonus is certainly better than nothing. However, it is not the ultimate goal, and we can't rely on bonuses because that's not a great marketing, retention, recruitment technique either. So,
That won't change the start salary.
correct.
So if you give them partial money now, say the final quarter of the year, so we sort of missed January, February, and then, but anyway, say it became effective April 1, we would know what that amount is. But the start salary and their whole scale would go up, like we had funded it for the whole year. We just didn't have the cash. So start with 22, we would have to have that 1.5 million in their budget.
Yes.
Not count any raise moving forward for 22.
Yes.
You don't think that's micromanaging?
That's the commitment. It would be, it doesn't have to be a heavy lift in 21, but it's gonna be a heavy lift in 22. We have to make sure that we have the tax rate where we can support that.
Right. Mr. Colley, I agree completely with what you just said, that there is that cost savings because of the delay, but of course it's heavy lifting in FY '22 with no increase in the health insurance and the term, the life insurance, what is it,
The group life.
the group life, I could never
and the
remember that.
VRS.
and VRS, in addition to positive sales tax revenue, in addition to knowing we're going to get state funding, we feel like this may be our time to make change and head in the direction of closing our gap, and really achieving a pay scale that is reflective of the effectiveness and the dedication of our staff.
Well, the reality of it is, Mr. Cully has not put our budget together, so this will have to be continued as well. We'll move on and take everything under advisement.
Sure.
And we'll take a look at again, my position
With what?
as the board member that was here when the agreement was, as I told you.
Yeah, he's inserted, that was all I heard.
And we just have to agree to disagree on what that number is.
Sure.
But we do agree that
Right.
something has to be done, and
Right.
just not sure, I'm not sure at all that we're gonna be able to get to where you want us to be, but we'll just do the best we can.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to number one now, discussion of the FY 22 school budget request.
We had only requested to talk about FY 22 operations budget. So
Operations budget, right.
I'm not
Sorry.
certain how compensation and operations budget were separated, because in our
Okay.
minds, those are one and the same.
Okay.
So we're happy to answer any other questions in relation to positions or any other thoughts that you'd like to seek clarity on. We're not prepared with anything
Right.
formal,
Well,
though.
Ms. Long, you have any questions about anything that we talked about with the compensation, the 2018-19 reversion, 2020 reversion? Or what
It's
you
just
need to
really
clear up?
hard to make any decisions about until we hear from the state and we get our budget as to what we can do, because as I said, we have lots of other departments we also have to think about.
Mr. Black, do you have any comment?
I just have a couple. When Mr. Cully, we haven't seen a budget yet, so I agree with 100% with Ms. Long. I mean, we haven't seen, our deputies and fire are way behind in their salaries too. I mean, much farther behind than actually I think the teachers are. In the scale compared to surrounding jurisdictions. So that's something we're gonna have to definitely take a look at.
Right.
So we've gotta see what Mr. Cully says. I think there is agreement that something needs to be done, and we can't just keep on going back. Whether you agree that the salary study was fully implemented by the, or was not, there's a reality that the teachers, we understand, at least I do, that the teachers are behind, and we need to do something about it to move forward. Whether we're gonna be able to do what you guys want us to do is a different situation. I think Mr. Underwood hit on that. I will say, for me, I didn't really say much on the capital project part. I've heard something saying about micromanagement. The reality behind it is we are in charge of the taxpayer money. So we are, when we turn over money, for example, I go, my particular, and you guys have heard it, the bathrooms in the schools, okay? The bathrooms in the schools, they're just not, they're not something that the Caroline High School should be proud of. When I go into Caroline High School, they're just not in good shape. And you go in there and you see that's not in the budget. It's not there in your cost. So to us, when people say, hey, the bathrooms are just not in good shape, and it's not in a cost, and we're talking about a wrestling, and I understand the wrestling thing, I get it, but at the same time, to me, like, there should be priorities, and that should be kind of at the top of the list. So we do, at the last meeting, so when people say micromanaging, at the last meeting, we kind of came together as a group, right? And we said, hey, look, and you guys just said tonight, hey, great job, we agreed on this. I think we would like some kind of on this list. We went through some input as like what we're hearing too, as far as where the money would be best spent. So I think as we move forward, if you have input from us and say, hey, wait a second, this is what we're hearing, I mean, when you start talking about the general public having to use bathrooms compared to, I understand wrestling's important, I'm not saying it's not, but everyone has to use that. I think there needs to be some sort of agreement, like we had Mr. Underwood on the projects that we did at the last meeting. Here's projects that we kind of agreed to, and then we'll move forward and go forward. So my suggestion is, as moving forward, that we have that discussion. We're not trying to micromanage, but at the same time, if we spend $1 million here, and then all of a sudden, then you say, well, the bathrooms need to be done. Well, we've kind of already brought that up. If that makes sense. So we're not trying to micromanage. What we're trying to say is this is what we're hearing, and we're responsible for that one. So that's all I've got to add right now.
Mr. Seeley,
I've asked my questions along the way, so
Mr. Forehand,
I've said what I need to say
Mr.
during the
Thomas.
turn.
I have a personal confession. I am a hoarder, so can you please send me this electronically next time?
All of these documents?
Yes,
We will work on that for you.
thank you very much.
Might be one scanned document that Mrs. Stevens will be working on.
That would be fine. That would be, I can handle the one scan
Sure.
document.
Sure.
I have an issue with a lot of papers.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
The county's like that as well.
We're happy to share. We'll be sure to send it to the whole board, both boards, and the typical administrative staff that we send items to. Mr. Colley. Sure thing.
when,
Chairman, can I just make a statement of 1 minute?
yes, I was gonna give this to your chairman, but
Oh,
if
I'm
it's all
sorry,
right.
I'm sorry.
I'm not, but if that's okay.
Go ahead.
My comment is, I don't like kicking the can down the road when I feel there's monies that could be spent in schools now that we know need to be spent on items. As I said, that was my reason for coming back to you, to say, let's get some of these things moving. We got reversion money from 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, which is kind of crazy. We should be moving that process along for you. That was my rationale for saying, hey, let's get at least the money that we know and we've all agreed to, that is reversion money, moving to make our schools better while schools are closed. We get some of the hard stuff done in the schools while students aren't there. And that was the reason I said, hey, let's start on this $1 million. We got to the 1 million too. As far as the compensation study, my feeling again, as the Reedy Church representative, not saying that teachers don't, I was a teacher and made $21,000. I know that teachers aren't up to snuff in terms of pay. But when people are losing jobs and they're calling and saying, I just read an article about water disconnects, and I have to be responsive to the people of Reedy Church to say, what do I need to do to help hold my district and the income level of my folks in line, and also pay our teachers, pay the deputies, fund the $13 million water connection that's coming, fund the utilities that are coming. The whole pie sits in the county. We don't want to take anything from you. I just want to be fair. And if this were a normal year and you had 400, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. This wouldn't be a conversation. But the taxpayers ask us to do diligence on their money. And that's what I try to do. I try to get to a bottom line. Hey, don't kick the can down the road anymore about reversion funds. This is what we have. We're back to zero. We're going to spend it. So we all hear the same thing from Reggie Underwood. Hey, you asked for 1.8 for the compensation study. It does not meet your need now, but it's what you asked for. Don't say I didn't. We didn't vote as a board to give you the 1.8. Now let's say, how do we move forward from less than 2018 standard for teachers to get to where we need to be? If we were to fund the school requests year after year, we would have already doubled the tax rate in the county. In order to give you $3.5 million, and 1 cent is $300,000, just this year, you do the math.
1 cent's $2.50.
Once it's 300,000, once it's 300 now, they say.
3 now.
So, we don't, this board, and I've been on this board for a little while, we don't wanna take anything from you. All I wanna do is be transparent, so that you understand my thinking from my constituents. When I taught here, I paid out of my pocket to travel with my ball club on a bus because I didn't want to feel like we were second class. I rented a charter bus. I fed my kids out of my pocket. Not that I thought it was right, but that's what they deserve. And we're gonna do the absolute best. We're not gonna take anything, if I really believed in my heart that the $1.7 million should go back to schools, I wouldn't have a discussion. I don't feel it in my heart. And all the taxpayers that call me day after day after day after day, they ask me why. They're not in school, why? Why there's a variant, why? Well, it's still tough. It's still tough. And we make the tough decisions. As a teacher, it's still tough. Change is tough, but we have to be sensible also. So I'm a little different. I like to put things in black and white, say this is what we're going to do. Everybody hears the same thing. That's why I'm glad we got rid of the 2-on-2. All 5 of 6 of us need to hear the same thing and say, hey, this is where we are, Reggie, you said, and this is what we're going to do. Yes. I say, we gave you the money. I'll still stand by that. But I'm willing to negotiate to move our teachers forward. Yes, I don't think you deserve the reversion funds from 2020. If you need something, let us know. If you need to fix something happens, that's why we're here. I worked in another school district, and I'll stop. And what the Board of Supervisors did was, if they didn't believe when you came to me and asked me for 40 million, I'd give you 37 million and make you come back to me. We don't want to get to that. Now, if you want us to give you 37 million and say, do the best you can, I don't think you'd appreciate that. I think you'd rather have us asking the hard questions now. And that's all I have to say. Madam Chair, your board comments.
Are there any board members with more comments?
Yes. Right.
Yes, sir.
I want to address Floyd's issue about caring about source of fund. The school board can petition the Board of Supervisors only. We have no sway with the state vis-a-vis how much they'll provide to us for anything, most especially salaries. Our petition to the Board of Supervisors was for them to fund the salary study without regard to the state's intended contribution. I view the salary study raises as separate and distinct from any raises proposed by the state. The happenstance concurrence that the state increases while CCPS needs to finalize our salary study is not controllable by us. And to infer that the funding for the raises required by the state should be part and parcel of the salary study is disingenuous. It's not. They're different. The funding was for different things. The salary study was a separate and distinct thing with a separate and distinct dollar value that needed to be funded. And it needed to come from the county. All of it. We happened to get some from the state at the time, and part of it was for the 2% raises or whatever they happen to have, the happenstance concurrences of their increases.
I was gonna wait for you to finish, but
I'm done.
That wasn't my issue. I think that was Mr. Underwood's issue. My issue was, do you care where the money comes from? Or my question.
I do care when I'm held to task for how I spend it or whether or not the funding it's colored blue or colored green and I have to spend one certain pot or another. Yeah, I do.
Task for that.
I do. Well, you asked if I care about it, and that's what I'm telling you what I care about.
Okay, well, you said you wanted to address my concern. I just want to make sure you understand what my concern was. So, you understand what my concern was?
I hear
Okay, all I cared about was where the money came from, what the total was, and what 1% for the non-SOQ people cost.
That's different. I was
That's all I care
talking about earlier in the discussion in the evening, you asked, Sarah, do you care where the money comes from? Yes,
You do care?
yes.
Why?
When I asked for 1.8 million to fund a salary study, and we need it, that's separate and distinct. We're asking you for it. We're not asking the state for it. We can't.
No, that's wrong, John.
That's
Come on.
wrong.
That's wrong.
You got
But we won't,
You got 1.8 million.
okay.
Okay, it's my opinion, just like you had yours, I'll listen to
Right.
you. You can tell me I'm wrong, that's
Right.
fine, but I'm
Right.
not, I don't believe I'm wrong, you don't believe you're wrong, so that's just my opinion on it. Can we
You know
move
what,
on?
you're absolutely right, and I know exactly what to do about that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Are there any other board members with,
Yes,
Mr. Tillman.
And
first of all, I
if you address me, I'm
would
coming
like to
back.
thank both boards for coming together and doing what we can do to address the needs of education.
He called my name.
The only thing I would say is that, there are many needs that we have. If we got everything that we asked for tonight, that would not cover many of the issues that are part of the school system. And so we're not here to ask you to fund everything that's wrong at one time. We know you can't do that. But we do know that we get what we pay for. And when we don't address an issue, it doesn't go away. It compounds, and the next year, it's that much worse. And the only other thing I will say is that if the state comes up and gives us some extra, if you will, money, or some funding that we didn't know we were gonna get, I don't want you to think that because we got that funding, that we don't need your funding. We need all the funding that we can get. We need to address our salaries, which we did tonight, or we're trying to do tonight. We are the entity in this county. The people that work for us have to have college degrees, for the most part. Unless we're talking about some of the paraprofessionals, but even they have to have training. So, when we look at $45,000 as a starting pay, or $44,000 in 2021, that's just not a lot of money. But the people that we are asking to do that are people who have to have skills. They're people who have to be educated. They are people who have to have the skills that's necessary to provide the education that our students need. I know what you're dealing with. I dealt with it for 20 years. I know what the school board's dealing with, even though I haven't been there that long. But I can say to you, unless we find a way to address these needs, our children are going to be the ones to suffer. I don't want to raise taxes. I'm not a tax person. But I also don't want to sacrifice the future of our children to keep our taxes low. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Kelly, you
Real
have
quick,
one?
Mr. Underwood, I'd like to thank you personally for acknowledging what I like to call the water under the bridge. Is a lot of times boards will sit here and talk about stuff that happened years ago, and I agree with you 100% that we just need to realize where we are right now. It doesn't matter how we got here, we are where we are, and we've got to move forward with that. And I think that's a very important thing that personally I get involved in that too, and I think we all do, but I appreciate your leadership for that. And secondly, a lot of comments were made about the differences between how we lead and if we're managing in day-to-day in the week. And what I would like to say to everybody in this room is that we have a ton of committees at the school division level, and if any of you are passionate about those issues, I know some of you serve on some of those committees in the county, we will welcome you with open arms and your opinions and your voice, and definitely will appreciate your time if you're willing to step up to any one of those committees and help us guide us to the place where we all want to go. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Spalding?
No, I just, but if I heard Floyd right earlier, you said that, when we say we were gonna give the teachers 2%, 3%, whatever it was, and wouldn't give it to them, we used it for something else. That's not true, Floyd. We may say, when that what you said, well, anyway, if we said we're gonna give them a 5% raise, and we can't come up with the money, then we've got to go down to 2% or whatever it is and so forth, no. But they will get whatever we can give them. And we're not gonna hold out on any of our personnel for that matter. Did I understand you, or
Except the superintendent.
was my mask in my ears?
Not quite, Coach. What I was saying, and I wanted to make sure it was clear, and I think specifically what I said is I was gonna stand on the table when we have our board budget discussion to get a raise for teachers. If was the word I said, if we do that, and then the school board does not use that money for raises for teachers, I am in trouble. That's what I said. I believe that's what I said.
That's what you said.
Okay? So understand what I said, and you know, I think everybody in this room knows me, and I'm a little older and I'm a little more.
Outspoken.
No, I was always outspoken, but I'm a little shorter. So if you ask something or you say something to me, I want to make sure you understand what I said. So you understood what I said now, because it was an if. I didn't say you didn't use it before or you haven't done it before. I said if. You understand me?
Yeah, I understand you, but
Okay.
I'm just saying, I want to get myself clear on that. We can only give teachers what we can get. Now, we may come up with these big ideas, we're going to give them a 5% or 6%. If we can't come up with the money, then we can't give them that. We've got to go down the ladder somewhere and so forth and all. But we've never, and I've been on the board a long time, told teachers you're going to get 30% or 5%, then taking half of that and use it for something else. That's never happened.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Ms. Carson?
I do have just one comment. First of all, I appreciate us being able to have the board-to-board. I think it's important that we all are hearing, or hopefully hearing, and I appreciate Mr. Underwood, you sparing it. I'd like to say, on behalf of our board, we have tried to be as transparent as possible. I feel like that was something that there have been a lot of issues with formerly, and our board is prepared to answer any question. Dr. Calveric is a very good orator. But I'd like to say this. Reversion funds were always, as you spoke, given back to the school system. And we have tried to be honest and transparent with the monies. And because it was a different year, we did our due diligence. We didn't try to hide anything from you. We showed you what we had and what we had done. And I think it is only fair, because we were good stewards of our money, that we get at least half option B back, if nothing else. I think it's only fair. And I mean, reversion funds have always been an understated issue that we would get them back. So this goes back to when a certain superintendent was here, and we spent down because we were afraid we weren't going to get it back. So we don't do that anymore. But I don't feel like it's fair that we did everything humanly possible to save money and to show you what we did and give it back, because we didn't have to be honest and transparent, but we are, because that's the kind of board we are. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Ms. Carson, I absolutely agree with you that the reversion funds have been coming back. And the board, I think, we've always agreed to give the money back to school for capital project. I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound kind of ugly, because I've worked in a couple of school districts. and I've watched, and oftentimes we bite the hand that feeds us. And it comes back to bite you. I wanna be transparent. I wanna feel everything that we do is above board. And that's why I start with the numbers that I start with and say, stop kicking the can down the road. I felt years ago that we should have cut your budget by over $1 million, because I didn't think there was transparency. I felt you needed to hurt some. But the other board members said, we're gonna go along with what they asked us to do. I think you have to be fair and you have to be honest. And I go by my gut. Big man with a big heart. And when my heart tells me that I'm right, I feel I'm right. And I don't make any apologies when I believe I'm right. I hold to my word, I do what I say, I ask the board to do what I believe is right, and they all take, we get on the phone and we bicker back and forth about money all the time. But I know we're speaking from the heart and what should be, and we don't have any ill feeling, and I don't want to have any ill feeling. I want to do what's right to make this, my home, better. That's our goal. This is our home.
It's all of our homes. I mean, all of us on this, both boards,
Absolutely.
It's all of our homes, yes.
That's correct. So even though we're in adversarial role in that we say, and every board across the Commonwealth does the same thing. We bicker about how much money you should give to this one or that one. Some are a lot worse than we are. So I think we do pretty good on most occasions.
It's not really an adversarial role. It's an adversarial process.
Process.
And I think that's where we get caught. And I meant to say one thing, and I'm sorry if I can't.
Yeah.
I do want to say thank you to the school board and all of the staff. I mean, not for just this meeting, but you've done something really, really important, and you've been feeding the kids all through the year, through the summer, and I told somebody, because I personally experienced this, it's hard to learn on an empty stomach. It's hard to listen to a teacher when your stomach's growling. You know, I know what that's like, and I really do appreciate the fact that you guys have made the extra effort to help feed the kids, because a lot of kids in this county, that's their only meal when they're at school. So when school is closed, you guys made the extra effort and set up lunch boxes and giveaways, and I really, from the bottom of my heart, do appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
I think those are all my board members, so my comments, and I have written some notes, but I'm just gonna speak. I wanna say thank you to the Board of Supervisors and to you as well, because one of the things that we have been advocating for is the communication, because there's so many nuances, and coming into the regularly scheduled board meeting and questions coming from the stage, to me, I'm a homegrown girl, it was sloppy. And it did not feel good, nor did it look good. And so from my very first meeting, I shared that with all of you that were on the board at that time. And so in this season, what we are committed to doing is having the difficult conversations and being respectful to hear out the different opinions without, having sidebars and cutting people off and, some of the ugliness that has happened in this room. And so I feel really good in this moment from an emotional standpoint, because I'm drained as well, but I think it's different as a school system to come to the table knowing that our role in this community is huge, as we have seen when schools shut down. So the value of education is something that I think is paramount, and everybody sees that in a different way. And like you, what we talked about chair to chair was there are issues that need to be resolved, and we cannot keep rolling it forward. And what I've asked this team and everybody in the back of this room to do is to take the action items, if there are questions that are asked, make sure that we are being responsive so that we never come back in this meeting and you've asked us something 2 months ago and you're still asking the same question because we have not done our due diligence. And so what I'm hearing tonight is that we need to make sure that accounting is reconciled so that we are not coming in meetings and you're presenting one number and we're presenting something else. I have on the to-do list that we are following up with CARES money and the stipulation, and can it be used for broadband? I have that there's a question about the 1% in terms of the calculation for non-SOQs. There's a request for documents to be scanned. And I have that we have not resolved reversion funds for FY20. And we have not resolved the compensation study, but we have discovered where the gap was. And the gap appeared to be in preliminary reports data being used versus the final. And then in moving forward, whatever that is, we still need to address it moving forward. So that's what I have from a constructive standpoint coming out of this meeting. So that's what I was gonna say. Our next meeting is March 9th.
Which I
That's our
believe is
board meeting.
prior to your board meeting.
Are we meeting prior to that?
That is what was proposed.
That's what county sent us.
Charlie, is that what you remember?
Yeah, March 9th at 5, and, prior to the board meeting.
That's next, that's.
All right, Mr. Cully,
That's not gonna be as detailed as this.
are you gonna be able to provide us, don't we have 2 meetings a month in March?
Yeah.
When are you going to be, right, when are you going to have some numbers for us to look at? What's your plan?
We have a meeting scheduled for March 2nd that we can do some preliminary numbers and show you where things are preliminary. We won't be finished. We'll try to do a budget presentation on March 9th.
Can we move down to the second? You guys are in agreement with that?
That's fine, I mean, we're not ready on the 9th.
No, we're not. That's why I'd like to, I don't wanna hold a meeting for the sake of holding a meeting. I'd rather try to resolve our reversion money, our salary scale, the understanding about the salary scale, to see what, if I need to talk to certain of my board. I have an idea, but I want to hear from the board. I think it would be advisable to have that work session the second meeting of March. Is that possible, Dr. Calvert, Dr. Newport?
So I was gonna ask, so Dr. Calvert and Ms. Stevens, with these 2 issues not resolved, what is the impact to our budget presentation? Will it continue to move forward the way that it is?
Yes, the way we presented our budget was considering that we would need full funding for any partial funding, if possible, received for FY21 raise. So the budget would remain intact as presented.
So the issue is we can't resolve those things
Right.
until these things are resolved. We have to keep carrying it.
Okay.
So moving to the second meeting.
Mr. Cully, are we okay for the second Tuesday meeting, 4th Tuesday in March?
4th Tuesday, March, yeah, that's fine. That should be when we're having the public hearing. That's our hope.
Okay,
But that'll be at 7:30.
okay. Then we'll scratch that and go to the second, fourth Tuesday of March. 23rd, March 23rd, 5 o'clock.
Correct, instead of the 9th. Mr. Taylor.
At 5 here. Now, that's only, let me say that meeting, we have a meeting afterwards, so we really need to be succinct and move forward, because we do have a meeting,
Sure.
unless you wanted to schedule another day, but I would prefer to have it then. So, we need to try to bring some closure to those 2 issues. So a 45-minute,
Right. And I would imagine the only agenda item that we would have would be an update associated with the end of special session and ultimately our
Right.
help tool, which would then provide you with a number. And we would certainly provide that in advance of that meeting, so we could revisit that. Otherwise, all of our other information remains the same. And I don't know if you'll want to revisit FY20 that night or not. I don't think we'll
Absolutely,
have
oh,
time.
absolutely, we have time.
Okay.
The sooner we can resolve it, the better.
I agree.
Mr. John,
Yes, sir.
is everything ready to go for Monday? Schools?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we are so anxious and excited to receive those students desiring.
We're very excited.
Yes.
They all had shots.
Say that again?
All teachers have shots.
The teachers had shots?
Oh, anyone that has desired a shot has had the opportunity to either receive their first and second shot through Mary Washington. Actually, many of them are getting them tomorrow. There's a large cadre of folks going tomorrow. And then those who were either, I'll say tardy to the party in that they didn't do the Mary Washington process and maybe their decision has altered. They've reached out to Mr. Wick and the county has been terrific in getting them into the county clinic. So we should be good to go. Thank you for asking.
Great.
We're excited about that.
Motion to adjourn.
What's that?
Now here's some positive news to close us out. Carolina County had another state champ this year.
Wrestling.
Decided.
Wrestling?
Yes.
Yep. And we had another young man place fifth, so we had two wrestlers all state, and we had a state champ.
State champion. Great. Great job.
Did you want the chief to update you on the Route 17?
Oh, yes, I have one more, yes, I do. We can let them go.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm ready for a motion.
I understand. I have no issue with the motion.
I just want to get it right.
I hear you, as do we. Got it?
Yes, it's been made and seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.
All right, board, we have one more issue for us, and then we'll.
Chief Walker, there's time walking around. Oh, there he is.
I thought we could have given this for you.
She gave me Mr. Culler's package, is that everything in there?
I did ask me, unless I will tell her.
Let's still be really quick.
That's not So we shuffled it 4 hours. She'll be on site. I'll let her know you're doing it. Sorry, Chief Loftus.
No, I'm an afterthought, that's okay. Well, it's at the end of the, not afterthought, that's at the end.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Oh, by the way, I'll be short.
Be like you, but I can love How you doing? Good evening. How you feeling tonight, man? Hey, all right? Freaking working out in the shed, man. Water coming from making some hay. Hey. It is what it is. Would be a nice spot.
Can we have, Chief Loftus, give me? Yes, sir.
I think at this point, most of you have heard 17, although on our last meeting, we talked about it being closed, and options for us getting to the hospital were limited. So you asked me to bring back some options. Since then, VDOT has said they're not going to close 17 completely at Mount Road. They're only going to bring it down to 1 lane. So that really negates all of our problems. We'll still be able to pass through there. They are putting a signalized intersection in there, so it will be semi-permanent for a period of time. And they hope to have that up very soon. But they're out there working today with signage and barriers, so we expect to see that. According to Kyle, he wouldn't give me a time frame, but he just said very soon. So no issues with response.
I think it would be up already, except that there's electricity out there. We all know REC's been really busy these past couple days. So I think that's the big hold up now. I will say, warn all your constituents though, already complained about the signing at the new post entrance, South Point, Fort Lawn for 17 days. You know, just little signs.
It's poor at best.
It's poor at best, but hopefully that's,
It's a sign on.
and it's because it's not worth paying for the signs, and we're
I
gonna
don't
go
know
on.
if that went through. I was down there,
So,
maybe,
that'd be
I
good.
wasn't going, but.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Chief Loftus.
That's it. I move for, we adjourn.
Hey, we're gonna negotiate with this,
You have to recess to March 2nd.
Oh, I'm
recess.
sorry.
what's wrong with this?
March 2nd is our
Why do we have to recess tomorrow for our budget work?
budget work session. Charlie.
You're killing me.
Who's gonna talk to this cable provider since we're saying you didn't know that yet, did you? Okay, we'll talk about that, okay, I'm good.
All right, so we need a motion to adjourn,
To March
recess.
2nd.
Recess to March 2nd.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We are recessed.
Wow, so Jeff, did you read this?